I read a bunch of the comments, and I've got to I read all of the comments, by the way. But I saw a number of comments talking about my lack of appreciation for jiu-jitsu. Now, that does bother me. I am a part of that community. I have a black belt under Fabiano Schurner, which was one of the most difficult black belts that you can get. It took me 20 years. I'm very proud of it. I belong to a gym. I go in there. They refer to me as professor. This is a title that I earned. I am not turning on my own community by telling you you're not going to submit a good guy from your back. I'm not turning on it at all. I've observed the sport. Let me give you a brief timeline, guys, okay? In 1993 in Mobile, Alabama, they set up something called the Octagon. They held something called the Ultimate Fighting Championships. A skinny guy named Royce, who weighed 178 pounds, beat 3 men in one night. He came back at UFC 2, and this time he beat 4 men in one night. Now, you can rinse and repeat the amazing career of Royce Gracie, but at some point, the Nevada State Legislature passed a law called mixed martial arts. They came in with weights. They came in with gloves. They came in with rules and regulations, and above everything else, they came in with rounds. And Royce Gracie never did it again. Now, Royce taught the world, and he showed the world the effectiveness of his craft. But to misremember why Royce quit doing it is to disrespect what Royce did for all of us. There's nothing wrong with the fact that Royce didn't go do it again. Royce left us with a philosophy before he exited. Don't think you got to bring up the Matt Hughes fight later in K1. I know Royce's career. Royce said jiu-jitsu is not meant to do if they're going to break you and stand you up. That is not what would happen in a real-life situation. And Royce had very good reason for saying this, considering his father fought some guy for a day. You guys know about that? I can't remember the story. I used to know this perfectly, but Helio fought some guy for a day. Helio was doing basically what Gordon Ryan does now, which is submission only, no time limit matches, but it went like a day. It was 22 hours or something crazy. So Royce had his theory, though, and he shared that with us. If you're going to reset a position, the whole time I'm feeling, I'm draining you, I'm setting you up. If you reset that, every 5 minutes, I'm now not doing what my father trained me to do. It was a huge clue that Royce gave us. And you don't see a lot of guys getting submissions ever since they put the round system in. Now, when you do see your submissions, guys, you're going, Chael, what are you talking? I see submissions all the time. When you see your submissions, you're not seeing them from the guy on bottom. That's what I'm reminding you of. Of course guillotines work. Of course taking a guy's back. Of course reversing it. Of course topside triangles. Of course head and arm choke. You're seeing that done by the top guy, which is not what Royce left us with when Royce stopped competing in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. It's very relevant that you know that. If we were to just go to a friend of the show, Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland has one problem as I see it, which is he does not resist the takedown, he cooperates. He's happy to be on bottom, which makes me want to grab Kevin and say, Kevin, I know you love jiu-jitsu, but were you not following? Were you not following the lessons that Royce not only taught us, he left us with, which is this sport, particularly for guard reasons, is not designed for 5-round increments when you're going to be broken and come back up to your feet. Now, if you know something new and you know something better and you think you're even better than Royce Gracie, I mean, by all means, I'll tune in and listen. But if you're wrong and time runs out, don't be surprised. Don't put a surprised look on your face when the judges go with the other guy. And there's a number of things where this is true. I have a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I consider myself a boxer. I only did a couple of sports when I was growing up, but I boxed and I was going to go make the 2000 Olympic team. I had this fancy plans in boxing. I spent a lot of time boxing. But any boxing coach you work with in any boxing fight that you watch, the coaches are going to tell you what the fight is going to show you, which is this is going to be controlled by a jab. But there's only been one MMA fight in all of history that was controlled by a jab. It was St. Pierre versus Koscheck Part 2. the next thing that the boxing community, when they come over to MMA, are going to tell you is about body shots. The problem is if you dip down to dig to the guy's body, he grabs you by the neck and he knees you in the face. So body shots are very effective. So are jabs. We learned them. But over a course of time, we have to break down what the most effective techniques are. Les Gutches, number 2 in command out at USA Wrestling. But every time that we have a World Championships or an Olympic Games, Les will bring a team in, and they must watch every single match that took place at the World Championships and the Olympic Games, and they must mark what techniques scored most frequently. Is that a high cross? Is it a double? Is it a gut wrench? Is it a leg lace? Which on top always switch back and forth. But he'll have these notes. Those are clues. What is the highest percentage scoring techniques that you've got? And jabs and body shots in stand-up are towards the bottom of the list, even though the community tells you to do that. Finding a submission from your back is on the top of the list of things that don't work. But your mind tells you something different. You got some kind of remorse. You got some kind of nostalgia. Back to 93. You're not disrespecting Royce. Royce himself told us in 2001, that's not what jiu-jitsu was made for. Particularly if the guy doesn't have a gi to absorb the sweat. You're not disrespecting Royce or the family. You're showing that you paid attention and that you listened and watched them. I just got to tell you, whenever I get a pushback here, because Charles isn't going to submit anybody from his back. Well, Charles has 8 submissions. Okay. Charles has not submitted anybody good from his back. Okay, let me stop you right there. Now, that doesn't mean at some point in the hold it doesn't transition and he ends up on bottom. Damian Maia was another. He put on a topside triangle and then he rolled over to his back. That's very different. It's very, very different. What Bo Nickel did in his last fight, just by example. Yes, he went to the bottom. Yes, he did a triangle, but he started it all from the top. It's very different. And it's really important that you observe that, or you're just missing what we're doing here. Now, I will happily be wrong. If Charles goes out, he does it from his back, and I've got to take back everything I said. Great, but we just learned something. We need to study that and break it down. How did he do it from his back? Was it wrist control? Was it the length of Charles? Did he set it up with strike first like Tony Ferguson does? How was it that he was able to apply a technique from his back? It would be very fascinating to see because we haven't seen it in a meaningful period of time. And if you get anybody to cooperate you and want to start a fight from their back, by God, you've got a massive leg up. And I would be curious how Charles is training. I would just be curious. If Charles is training to find a submission from his back as opposed to get up, whether that's a reversal or stand up to his feet, he's got to give a real good look to his trainers and say, guys, what are we doing? Chael just said, statistically speaking, since 1995, moreover, once people realized a little bit about what Royce was doing and could join jiu-jitsu themselves, that this doesn't happen. Is that true? Have my own trainers and coaches not studied and observed world title fights, not studied main events? What is the highest percentage submission found in round 5? They should know that. What is the highest percentage found in round 2? They should know that. And maybe they do. Maybe they are working on getting up the bottom. And then you default down to the absolute worst case scenario, which is you can't get off the bottom. You're stuck on bottom and you've got to protect yourself. That is what jiu-jitsu is. I'd be curious. I don't know what Charles is working on. I don't know how he's training. But he's either working to get up off the bottom or he's not. And he's got a room full of coaches and trainers whose job it is to study this sport. And they're either telling him to get up off the bottom or they're not. Which means they're either giving him advice that statistically over 25 years has proven to work or they're not.